She wasn't angry, she wasn't screaming. She wasn't falling apart in public. She was quiet, calm, composed, and that is exactly what made her dangerous. Her name was Jennair Gerardot. Married for over 2 decades to a man she had built her entire life around. A woman who gave up her own career ambitions to follow her husband from city to city as he chased his professional dreams. But somewhere along the way, her husband stopped seeing her, and he started seeing someone else. What happened next, on the night of April 23, 2018, would shake a quiet Philadelphia suburb to its core and leave the entire country asking one question. Was Jennair Gerardot a broken, grieving woman pushed past the edge? Or was she a calculated, cold-blooded killer? Stay with me, because the truth is far more complex and far more disturbing than any headline ever told you. Welcome back to Dark Files, the channel that goes beyond the news report, beyond the court transcript, and into the real, messy, heartbreaking human stories behind the crimes that shook the world. If you're new here, welcome. You've found the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because every week we bring you a new case that will leave you thinking for days. And for those of you who've been here from the beginning, thank you. Your support keeps this channel alive. Now let's get into it. To understand what happened on that April night, you have to understand who Jennair was, not just as a headline, but as a person. Jennair Gerardot was born in 1967. She was smart, resourceful, and deeply devoted. By all accounts, she was not a woman who made impulsive decisions. She thought things through. She planned. She was meticulous in everything she did. She met Mark Gerardot when they were both young, and the two fell into a relationship that would define the next 2.5 decades of her life. They married, and Jennair did something that many women of her generation were conditioned to do. She built her identity around their partnership. As Mark's career progressed, Jennair followed. When he needed to relocate for work opportunities, she packed up. When his ambitions grew, she adapted. She supported him through career changes, through the ups and downs, through everything. But here's the question I want you to sit with. When someone pours their entire sense of self into another person, what happens when that person abandons them? That question is at the very heart of this case. By 2017, Mark had landed a new position at the University of Delaware as a communications professional. It was a significant career move, and as always, Jennair supported it. But this new chapter in Mark's life would introduce someone who would ultimately destroy both of their worlds. Her name was Meredith Chapman. Meredith Chapman was, by every measure, extraordinary. Born in 1982, she was accomplished, polished, and ambitious. She had been crowned Miss Delaware in 2003. She had a master's degree. By 2017, she was Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Villanova University, a senior executive in her mid-30s. Meredith was also beautiful, charismatic, and magnetic. She was the kind of person who lit up a room without trying. And when Mark Gerardot met her, he fell hard. What began as a professional relationship quietly transformed into an emotional and then physical affair. Mark, according to his own later account in his memoir, became consumed by Meredith. He described falling in love with her in a way that made him lose all rational judgment. But here's what Mark didn't know, or perhaps didn't want to acknowledge. Jennair already knew. How did Jennair find out? And how long had she been watching in silence? Keep watching, because what she did with that information will disturb you. Jennair Gerardot did not confront her husband. She did not hire a private investigator. She did not call a lawyer. She taught herself how to install spyware. That's not a dramatization. That is documented fact. Jennair spent weeks learning how to remotely access and monitor her husband's devices. She installed tracking software on Mark's phone and computer. She intercepted his text messages. She read his emails. She tracked his location in real time. For months, she watched her marriage disintegrate, message by message, location ping by location ping, in absolute silence. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine watching, in real time, the person you love choose someone else, and saying absolutely nothing. What would that do to a person's mind? According to accounts from those who knew her, Jennair became increasingly withdrawn and intense during this period. She confided in a small number of people that her marriage was in crisis, but she revealed nothing about the extent of her surveillance. Mark, meanwhile, had grown more brazen. He was spending significant time with Meredith. He and Jennair had even begun living separately, though they had not formally divorced or separated. Mark had told Jennair about the affair at some point, but by then, Jennair had already been watching it unfold in detail for months. She also did something else during this period that should have been a warning sign to everyone around her. She was not an impulsive woman. She was not acting out of a moment of rage. Every step she took during this period was deliberate, methodical, planned. On April 23, 2018, whatever plan had been forming in Jennair Gerardot's mind reached its final stage. That evening, Meredith Chapman was expected home at her apartment in Radnor, Pennsylvania, an upscale suburb of Philadelphia. She had plans with Mark Gerardot that night. What neither of them knew was that Jennair had used the tracking data she'd gathered to know exactly where Meredith lived. And sometime before Meredith arrived home, Jennair entered the apartment. She turned off the lights. She sat in the dark. And she waited. When Meredith Chapman arrived home that evening, she walked into complete darkness. According to investigators, the confrontation was brief and devastating. Jennair shot Meredith Chapman. Meredith was hit and would later be pronounced dead. Mark Gerardot arrived shortly after. He told investigators he heard a gunshot from outside, and when he entered the apartment, he found both women. Meredith Chapman was rushed to Bryn Mawr Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. 2 women gone. In the span of minutes. And Mark Gerardot, the man at the center of both of their lives, walked away physically unharmed. Do you think he was the true victim in this story, or the true cause of it? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Police descended on the scene quickly. What they found was not the chaotic aftermath of a crime of passion. The apartment showed clear signs of premeditation. Jennair had not stumbled there in a moment of jealous rage. She had planned this. Investigators found evidence of the spyware campaign. They found records of the gun purchase. They pieced together a timeline that showed a woman who had spent months building toward this moment, not someone who had simply snapped. But the investigation revealed depths of psychological torment, obsession, and betrayal that the public was only beginning to understand. In the months and years that followed, Mark Gerardot did something that shocked many people who followed the case. He wrote a book. Published in 2020, the memoir is Mark's first-person account of the affair, the unraveling of his marriage, and the events of April 23, 2018. The title, Obsolete, refers to how Jennair reportedly felt discarded, replaced, made irrelevant by the very man she had devoted her life to. In the book, Mark is unflinching about his own failings. He describes falling so deeply into the affair with Meredith that he lost sight of everything else. He acknowledges the pain he caused Jennair. He admits that he recognized warning signs in Jennair's behavior in the final weeks, but failed to act on them in any meaningful way. Here is something I want you to think about. If Mark had taken those warning signs seriously, if he had called for help, intervened, or even just been present, could 2 deaths have been prevented? Or was this already inevitable? The book was met with deeply divided reactions. Some readers found it honest and brave. Others found it self-serving, a narrative that cast Mark as a tortured bystander rather than an architect of the tragedy. Meredith Chapman's family was particularly vocal in their criticism, feeling that the book reopened wounds and prioritized Mark's perspective over their daughter's memory. Meredith Chapman left behind a family who remembers her not as a footnote in someone else's story, but as a daughter, a sister, a friend, a woman with a full, vibrant life that was taken from her. This case ignited an enormous conversation online. On true crime forums and social media platforms, people took deeply polarized positions. Some expressed sympathy for Jennair, painting her as a woman driven to madness by years of being dismissed, undervalued, and ultimately betrayed. They pointed to the sacrifices she made, the loyalty she showed, and the cold way in which her husband discarded her. Others were horrified by any attempt to sympathize with a murderer. Meredith Chapman, they argued, made choices as a consenting adult, but she did not deserve to die. She was a victim. Full stop. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. And that complexity is exactly what makes this case so deeply, uncomfortably human. Where do you stand? I'm genuinely asking, not to stir controversy, but because I think how we answer that question says a lot about how we think about betrayal, desperation, and responsibility. Tell me in the comments. Criminologists and psychologists who have studied this case point to several deeply important patterns that are worth understanding, not to excuse what happened, but to recognize warning signs that exist in real life around real people. First, the danger of identity enmeshment. When a person builds their entire sense of self around a relationship, the loss of that relationship can feel like a kind of psychological death. This does not justify violence, but it does explain the kind of desperation that can push a person past rational thinking. Second, surveillance as a trauma response. Jennair's months-long spying campaign was not healthy coping, it was a sign of profound psychological distress. If you or someone you know is engaging in obsessive monitoring of a partner, that is a signal that serious help is needed. Third, silence is not stability. The people around Jennair knew she was struggling, but the full depth of her plan was hidden. We often mistake quietness for coping. It isn't always. Have you ever known someone who was clearly struggling but hid it so well that no one noticed until it was too late? Just a yes or no in the comments. I want to know how common this really is. Mark Gerardot must live with the consequences of his choices for the rest of his life. And two families were shattered by a chain of events rooted in one broken marriage and one devastating betrayal. The Jennair Gerardot case doesn't have a villain who twirls a mustache. It doesn't have a clear hero. It has human beings, flawed, desperate, selfish, heartbroken human beings making catastrophic choices, and that is what makes it haunt us. Because somewhere in this story, most of us can find a thread we recognize. The fear of being left behind. The terror of becoming irrelevant to someone you love. The rage that comes with betrayal. What separates most of us from Jennair Gerardot isn't just moral clarity, it's circumstance, support, and access to help when we need it most. If you or someone you know is in a mental health crisis, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling or texting 988. You matter. Your pain is real, and there's another way through. Now, before you go, I want to hear from you. Was Jennair Gerardot a victim of her circumstances, or a cold-blooded killer? Was Mark Gerardot more responsible for this outcome than anyone acknowledges? And do you think Meredith Chapman's story gets enough attention on its own terms? Sound off in the comments. I read every single one. If this video gave you something to think about, please like, share, and subscribe to Dark Files. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new case. And if you want to go deeper on cases involving betrayal, obsession, and the psychology of crime, check out the videos coming up on your screen right now. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, the darkest stories are often the truest ones. This is Dark Files. I'll see you in the next one.